Hey, everybody. It is Trags once again. This is episode 22 of the Jungle Roar podcast. And we go in a slightly different direction for very good reason this week. I welcome in the one and only Tony Pike of Cincy 360 on ESPN 1530. You can hear him every day, noon to 2 p.m. You can also see him on Valley Sports Ohio. He co-hosts the Bearcats Insider, a terrific show every week with Dan Horde, Tony Pike and Dan Horde on that show. Certainly something you should be watching as a primer for this Friday's national semifinal in the college football playoff down at the Cotton Bowl in Arlington, Texas. Number 4 Cincinnati against number 1 Alabama. Tony, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, I appreciate you joining me. And when you say Alabama, you've got to add in the disrespected Alabama Crimson Tide now after this week's comments.
What do you think of Nick Saban?
I get that you have to try to do different things to motivate your team. And I understand where all that comes from. But, I watched Bryce Young's Heisman talk about how he's been, doubted his whole life. And I'm thinking, man, he's a 5-star recruit. He's, starting at Alabama as a sophomore. He just won the Heisman. And, this team just won the national championship. There's not a lot of people that doubt Alabama year in and year out. So I get that you've got to find different ways to motivate. It's just, to me, I laughed at some of the comments throughout the week as I'm thinking to myself, this, if anything, it's UC, the team that had to scratch and claw to even get the respect to be in the top 4. And now we're seeing it spun a little bit differently in Dallas.
As you know, I covered the Patriots from 1993 through 2019, and Patriots Dynasty 1.0, we like to call it, back in New England. They always harped on being disrespected. Nobody expected us to win, and once they won the 3rd Super Bowl, they knew they couldn't play that card anymore. Over. They tried, but it was definitely over. And I'm just surprised the way Bill knows Nick Saban, of course, how close they are, that Nick would go down that road. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. I want to get into some of the breakdowns of this game, which I actually find fascinating. And we'll start with the obvious. And you already mentioned him, Bryce Young, the Heisman Trophy winner, against the Bearcats quarterback, Desmond Ridder. It's an interesting matchup to me because Bryce Young is somebody who does it primarily with his arm, and Desmond Ridder is, to me, a true hybrid who can do it with his arm, the way he reads defenses, but he can also get out on the run and is more inclined to run for a first down, on 3rd and long.
Yeah. I can't tell you how many times during the radio show daily that instead of Bengals, I say Bearcats or vice versa. Because we're going into the new year, and the Bengals are in 1st in the AFC North, and the Bearcats are playing for a college football national championship berth.
Never happened before.
No, it's unbelievable where both of these teams and organizations are. But when you look at the quarterback battle, I mean, make no mistake about it, you're going up against the Heisman Trophy winner for a reason. I mean, Bryce Young earned his Heisman Trophy moment, and he earned winning that award. What I see when I think of Dez, as you mentioned, is the ability to run. But I feel like for most of the year, he's kind of been harnessed with a lot of his runs. You go back to his freshman, sophomore, junior year, he was running all over the place. That was more what he wanted to do. This year, I think they managed it perfectly for that reason. There was games as the season went on that he was used more as a runner. He was used more of a runner in that Notre Dame game. But the games that they had in control, they didn't run him as much. And I think that was by design because you get a healthy, ready-to-go Des Ridder now for this game coming up against Alabama. I think the harness has to come off because Bryce Young,
no question,
is not going to do a ton with his legs. He wants to be a pocket passer. And we'll get into the Bearcats defense and how they can harness that. Des Ridder's best asset is going to be getting on the edge and being a runner and a passer. Very rarely is he going to drop back, sit in the pocket against a pass rush in Alabama that was top 3 in the country and getting after the quarterback. If you want Jerome Ford to have success, you've got to have Des Ridder as a runner because that occupies more of the Alabama defense, and it's going to bring extra hats into the box and allow Des to hit Josh Wiley, Leonard Taylor, Alec Pierce. So I think Bryce Young's success is sitting in the pocket, having a lot of time, pushing the ball down the field. Des Ritter's success is going to be moving the pocket, getting the ball downfield, and using his legs as a run pass option. But I do think that strategically, Mike Denbrock and company limited his touches through a lot of the season for that reason, because there's not a ton out there. And we saw in years past when Des Ritter would run, when you're looking on TV or at the game, it might not look like he's moving very fast,
Right.
but he's so elusive with his strides. And Alabama hasn't seen that yet. So they haven't really played a quarterback like Des. So it's weird because I think both quarterbacks can have success in different ways in this game.
So I'm sure you've taken a look at the pressures and the sacks that Alabama has given up. And this is one way I think the Bearcats can really get to Bryce Young, or at least attack Alabama's offense. They've given up 46 sacks. They've lost 284 yards. Here's another number, Tony, that stuck out to me. 17 fumbles, 6 lost.
Yeah.
The Crimson Tide puts the ball on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this Bearcat defense has been opportunistic all season long. They're aggressive. They have playmakers.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good combination for UC. And, you take a look at Darian Beavers, Jay Sanders, and Joel DeBlanco. Those are just 3 of them to start with. And you can throw in what you think could be some of the pass rushers in this game. To me, that's where this game starts as a game plan for the Bearcats.
Yeah. When you really look at Alabama, they have given up sacks, and they're not historically, like you think of like the Derrick Henry, Mark Ingram, those type of run first teams. This is not that Alabama team. They don't run the ball particularly well. And then when they get in those situations where they have to pass, teams have been able to get after the quarterback a little bit. So, you mentioned the linebacking core. I think they play a huge role in this. The defensive line as a whole, whether they go 3 down or 4 down, has to get pressure up front. But the guy for me is Myjai Sanders. He came into this year as a top 2-round NFL draft prospect. And for much of the year, he's seen double teams. He has seen triple teams. Alabama is going to come out and say, look, we're going to block Myjai Sanders with 1. They're going to let their tackles try to block Myjai Sanders. So for the first time, I think Myjai sees some one-on-one.
Boy, I like that for UC.
I do. And I really think that the way his motor runs, he's a little bit undersized, but he's so quick off the edge. I think Myjai Sanders is huge because the obvious matchup is going to be Jameson Williams, Sauce Gardner, Kobe Bryant.
Yeah, right.
The Bearcats' strength in their secondary will allow them to put more in the box for the pass rush to try to get after Bryce Young. So I'm really interested what the front 7 can do. But I went back and I watched Ohio State, Alabama from last year. And I watched what Alabama did with Devontae Smith. They moved him around so much in that game, and Ohio State didn't move with him. So what I'm interested in, yes, can they get after the passer? But will Sauce Gardner, if Jameson Williams lines up in the slot, will he follow him the whole game and not allow Alabama to dictate who's going to cover their best receiver?
So that's interesting to me, because I was going to ask you whether or not you thought that Sauce Gardner would be on their top receiver and Kobe Bryant would be on their number 2 in terms of the statistics. Right. I think it's a situation where they could sit where they are, and whoever is on one side, or if they're both on one side, then they can pick and choose. I'm curious to get your perspective. You played the quarterback position. What would be the more likely scenario for the Bearcats to do with their top 2 corners?
Kobe Bryant is the Thorpe winner. Ahmad Gardner is a consensus All-American. What teams have had success against UC this year is when they put guys into the slot, because UC hasn't really sent their DBs into the slot. They keep them on the outside, and they try to keep opposing teams really on an island out there.
And they have linebackers who, not to cut you off, but they have linebackers who can cover.
Absolutely. I think they come out early and they try to play it like they have all year. But if Jameson Williams starts having success, I think you got to nip in the butt right away, and you got to put Sauce on him. You're talking about a guy that hasn't given up a touchdown in his Bearcat career in man-to-man coverage.
Unbelievable.
if I'm a quarterback going against UC, to me, it would make it easier for me to put my best receiver in the slot if they don't follow him around. Because, if I'm Bryce Young, I'm watching what Sauce has done, and that's a challenge because it puts pressure on you as a quarterback because you feel like you got to be perfect. When you line up in the slot and you might get Jameson Williams, as good as Darian Beavers is and as good as Brian Cook has been, that's still a matchup that favors one of the best receivers in the country. They did that with Devontae Smith last year. On the outside, whether it's Kobe or whether it's Sauce, I like the matchup against Jameson Williams. I'm just interested when they move him into the slot. And you think about this Nick Saban and Alabama coach team with now extra time to prepare. They're going to try to find ways to move Jameson Williams away from those two DBs, especially because their number 2 receiver is not playing in this game.
So that's a big factor in this game for the Bearcats. That's John Mitchie, I believe, right, who was out of this game. All right, let's move on to the red zone. Have you taken a look at the red zone numbers in this game? Remarkably similar.
Yes.
The Bearcats are 42 touchdowns and 61 shots. The Crimson Tide, 43 touchdowns and 61 shots. And to me, I mean, you're talking about 66% conversion rate for both teams, pretty much. That's pretty good, right?
It's really good. The biggest thing for me in this game, you're not going to beat Alabama by kicking field goals.
No.
And the Achilles heel for this Bearcats team has been missing field goals.
Yes.
I can't express enough how much of a momentum change it is when another team misses a field goal. Because for the offense, let's say they go down, you get 3 or 4 first downs, you move the ball against Alabama, you miss a chip shot field goal. It's such a gut punch that now Alabama has the momentum. The team that converts touchdowns in the red zone instead of trying field goals is a team that has a decided edge in this game. What I'm interested to see as the red zone unfolds, let's say first quarter, it's 4th and 7 from the 20-yard line. Does Luke Fickell kick or does Luke Fickell go for it?
Luke Fickell goes for it.
Yep.
I don't think there's any question about that.
I don't think if they're inside the 30, I don't see any scenario where they're not going for it, barring it being like 4th and 15.
4th and 15, exactly.
Yeah, something like that. If it's 4th and under 10, I think the Bearcats try to play 4-down football. And I think Mike Denbrock can use that, right? If it's 3rd and 7, it doesn't handcuff you to have to throw the ball. You can still give the ball to Jerome Ford and try to get in a 4th and 4, but you're not going to beat Alabama with field goals in the first place, especially when you're as poor as what UC has been kicking the field goal. I think you play aggressive, you leave it all on the table, and you try to convert those red zone trips to touchdowns.
Who is kicking in this game for the Bearcats?
That's a great question. It's a great question.
Are all 3 available?
I do believe all 3 are available. They've played it all year like it's been a competition. I'm guessing it's been a competition throughout bowl practices, but I would venture to guess that there's been a lot of conversations in the last month about the aggressiveness, what the threshold is. Is it plus territory? Is it the 40? Where are you going to see the Bearcats be aggressive as opposed to where are you going to see the Bearcats maybe try to punt the ball and say, okay, Alabama, against this defense, you got to go 90 yards on us.
Right. And I mean, we should bring up the fact Cole Smith kicked a championship winning field goal against Tulsa in the 2020 AAC championship game. There is that, and that was in the rain. Those were kind of difficult conditions and a pressure kick. I mean, I guess I would fall back on that. That has been the number one fear, I think, of every Bearcat fan of the season, is that this year would come down, whether it was getting into the BCS or actually in the BCS and playing a team like Alabama.
Yeah.
And it's a 1-possession game late and you're down 2 points.
Yeah. They haven't needed it this year because they've been in control in so many games, but you've seen early in games, missed extra points, missed field goals. Yep. It leaves an uneasy feeling, especially in this moment. You know, the kickers have struggled already this year, and now you're in the Cotton Bowl. You're playing against Alabama. You might have a little bit more stress on that kick. Maybe you kick it low and it gets blocked and returned. There's too many concerns for me to try to win this game with kicking field goals. I
couldn't agree more. Again, we are speaking with the one and only Tony Pike. He was on that 2009 Cincinnati Bearcats team that I believe had up until the AAC championship game this year. Yeah. You had quarterbacked in the greatest Bearcat football game ever.
Yeah.
I do
Yeah,
believe that. The
yeah, the
45-44 game in Pittsburgh. I remember it was a Saturday, and I was getting ready for Patriots coverage. It was a home game the next day at Gillette. But I
yeah,
remember watching that game, Tony, and it was one of, having grown up here in Cincinnati, it was one of my favorite football games I ever watched. Sean McDonough did the broadcast. I
yeah, he was
forget who,
great.
I think it was Todd Blackledge, maybe
Yeah, yeah.
on color. And it was just such a great game to watch. And I want to get, while we're talking about great UC moments, everybody remembers your pass to Armand Benz for the game-winning touchdown. But what do you remember most about that day, and what sticks out?
I like to not remember any of the first half of that day. I think I threw 3 interceptions. We were down 31-10. What I remember most, other than the pass, is the Marty Gilliard return kick. You know, because at the time we're down 21. It's right before the half. That stadium was loud. You know, Heinz Field was sold out. It was snowing. It was cold. He returns the kick, and at that point, nothing was really said on the sideline, but the look was, okay, we know we're an explosive offense. We know we can come back in this game. And then things start to fall together in the second half. And then they scored with just over a minute left to go up by 6. And then they missed the extra point. They botched the snap. And again, nothing was said, but just looking at that group of 10 others in the huddle, you kind of knew, okay, this is now not us going to tie, but us going to win back-to-back Big East championships. And at the time, if you remember, it was Texas playing Nebraska right after that.
I do.
Colt McCoy scrambled and Ndamukong pressured him. McCoy threw the ball out of bounds and the clock ran out. So we're thinking, not only did we just win the Big East again, but we're going to the national championship
to
game
play
Alabama.
There you go. Yeah.
They put a second back on the clock. We go play Florida, and Brian Kelly's gone. But that game was so fun. And this year was compared, you know, I was asked all the time, compare 09 to this year. And, you know, it was weird because 09, we had to outscore a lot of people. This year's defense is so much better. I think the 09 offense was more consistent. I think this offense at times this year has stalled a little bit. But there's so many really good comparisons from 2009 to this year's team, and really how the offense has evolved over these last few weeks has made this team so much more formidable with what they do offensively.
Isaiah Pede, of course. And when you look at him, and then take a look at Jerome Ford, do you see similarities?
Absolutely. That's to me the biggest surprise going into this year, because I knew Alec Pierce was such a weapon. I knew Josh Wiley and Leonard Taylor are both NFL tight ends. I didn't know what Jerome Ford was going to be. We saw the moment in the Peach Bowl. But man, to watch the explosive runs this year, to watch that run against Houston, to see what he can do as a pass catcher out of the backfield. He's a difference maker. And that's why, combined with Des Ridder in this game, it takes one misstep from an Alabama defensive player and the hole's there. And Jerome Ford can hit it, and Des Ridder can make you miss, and he can go for big gains as well. So Jerome Ford, to me, you know, I know he said he doesn't want to be known as the Alabama transfer.
I was just going to say
Bearcat.
Jerome Alabama transfer Ford.
But he's a difference maker, and if he can have success, because Alabama will be tough to run against. It's Alabama. But if UC stays with it and they don't abandon the run and go one-dimensional, I think at some point you see an explosive play from Jerome Ford. You know he's going to be running hard against his former team, but he changes the dynamic completely for this Bearcat offense.
How physical do you think the Bearcats' offensive line is, and can it be physical enough to, I don't want to even say wear down, but hang in with the defensive line long enough to get, you know, you maybe only need 5 explosive plays in this game on the run game to make a difference.
Yeah, if you look at the Houston AAC championship game, Houston came into that game tied with Alabama, 3rd in college football in sacks, and UC did a great job. Every offensive lineman goes over 300 pounds. They use Josh Wiley, Leonard Taylor, and the running backs really well to chip on the outside against defensive ends, so that helps Des Ridder. And Des Ridder doesn't need a lot of time, and he needs one running lane. So sometimes teams have to dial back their pressures because if you just pin your ears back and rush upfield, you leave a crease for Des Ridder that he's going to find and beat you with. So it was my biggest question mark coming into the season. What can the offensive line turn into? They lost 2 tackles. I think they've got 3 offensive linemen on first team all AAC players. So they've taken a big step forward, and their use of tight ends and running backs to help the pass protection is really dynamic. And I think it helps enough that they can protect Des Ridder in this game.
So what was the biggest area of growth in Des Ridder from the middle part of the season, where I think some people were concerned about his ability to read, maybe force? He did not look comfortable in certain games, to the end of the season where it looked like the old Des Ridder.
He put so much time in the offseason on his down the field passing, and it's been so good this year. Alec Pierce is a big reason why. They've got speed guys on the outside. But when Des Ridder struggled, he never got comfortable early in games. And for a quarterback, most quarterbacks, that's huge. You know, you look at some of the games he struggled early, his first pass is coming on 3rd and 9. And that's tough. You know, I'm always a proponent of getting, whether it's Joe Burrow here in Cincinnati, whether it's Des Ridder, get early completions and easy completions for quarterbacks, because it changes your confidence level. If it's 3rd and 10, your first pass, you're pressured, you're sacked, you're throwing a pass in a small window, you're not really in the game yet. You know, get out there, get a swing pass, get a hitch, get Des Ridder comfortable early. And they didn't do that at the middle part of the year. And when they started to get him easy completions early, and the throws that he makes, the small window throws when he's got confidence and he's driving into the throw, is a huge difference. And I think that played a big part in the success from that middle season lull to the explosiveness at the end.
You and I both know James Rapine, and James and I had this discussion on this podcast about 3 weeks ago when it was announced that Luke Fickell would not be leaving Cincinnati for Notre Dame. And I am of the belief that is because Luke Fickell does know what he has, at least for the short term here in Cincinnati. And I don't think he was going either way. And I want to get your, perspective on this, Tony Pike, as to whether or not you think Luke Fickell was ever going to take that Notre Dame job, or if he was very, very happy where he is in Cincinnati and wants to give it at least a couple more years.
I know he's extremely happy here in Cincinnati, and I also know that he wouldn't even talk to anyone until the season ended. I know that that's been his message all throughout. He's not going to create a distraction for his team, and I think that's what makes Luke Fickell such a player's first coach. I mean, we all see the reserved Luke Fickell, the quiet demeanor, and then you look at videos of him doing pull-ups in the locker room after wins. Yes. I mean, his team plays so hard for him. There's so much love. He has such a small circle that you really feel like you can trust and buy into what Luke Fickell's selling. There wasn't a job that came open that I thought Luke Fickell was leaving for, mostly because I know his wife loves it here.
Yes.
I know their family loves it here. They just built this huge barn that helps in recruiting. His son is on this team as an offensive lineman, and they're getting ready to go into the Big 12 here soon. So no longer is it a shot on UC that you can't go to UC and play for a national title. They're doing it this year, and they're going to go to a Power 5 conference here in a couple of years and have that chance year in and year out. And I think keeping Luke Fickell happy is a big part. He wants an indoor facility. They're making the steps now to get an indoor facility done at the University of Cincinnati. They're getting locker room upgrades. They're trying to find more money to pay assistant coaches. I really do feel like Luke Fickell appreciates the fact that UC was the team that gave him his chance to be a head coach, that UC stayed with him after that struggle of year one. And now they're seeing the benefits. He's got such a stranglehold on recruiting in Ohio. The recruiting classes are piling up. They are doing everything right. And I just feel like he's so comfortable in Cincinnati that he is here for the foreseeable future.
That's exactly what I said. So well said, Tony. I appreciate that. Also, obviously, you probably saw the clip of Brian Kelly's farewell at Notre Dame. Did you not?
Yeah.
Were you in the room? I assume you were in the room when he did likewise before the Sugar Bowl against Florida in January of 2010.
Yeah. I remember because I watched that video and I'm like, man, they got 4 minutes out of him. I think ours was like 90 seconds, and it was done right after our banquet. So we go undefeated. We're playing in the Sugar Bowl right before the banquet. You know, social media wasn't as crazy then, but it had broke on ESPN that Brian Kelly had took the job. And all throughout the banquet, he's talking about, you know, we and us and what we're going to do. And at the time, everyone already knew. So there was so much anger building. And then it was maybe 90 seconds, 2 minutes. He talked in front of us and walked out of the room, and that was it. So it was a very similar feeling. And I will say this, I've known Marcus Freeman for a long time.
Yep.
Notre Dame hit a home run in Marcus Freeman. I couldn't be happier for him, but seeing that brought back a lot of memories, because that Notre Dame team at the time was not eliminated from the playoffs. There was
By no
still
means.
There was still a good avenue that they could have got
Right.
in, and he left and moved on. So it brought back a lot of memories, but you know, UC's in a better place now. And I think Notre Dame is going to be in a better place with Marcus Freeman.
And to Brian Kelly's defense, and I think you would probably agree, it's probably easier for him, he feels, to recruit at LSU and be in that situation.
And look, he wasn't at Notre Dame for 3 years. Like, you know, it wasn't a short stint. He's the all-time winningest
coach there.
Yeah, he is. He's done a lot at Notre Dame. He felt it was time to move on. That's a little different than when he was here and it was seen as kind of the stepping stone. He's accomplished a lot at Notre Dame and now trying to do the same at LSU.
Okay, prediction on Friday, Alabama, Cincinnati, and then we'll get your other game as well.
Look, I've told people all along, and I've talked to different people leading up to this game. My thing is the biggest thing that UC needs to do is forget about what name's on the jersey. Because if you don't think of it as Nick Saban in Alabama and you take that name away, I think from an X's and O's standpoint, this game's really close. Now, if Alabama plays A+ football, no one in the country beats them. But we're so much creatures of habit that we just look at the last game. Georgia was impressive. I've watched LSU. I've watched them against Florida. I watched them against Texas A&M, Auburn. There are holes in this team. And I'm not saying that to be disrespectful. When you say there's holes in Alabama, you know, that's
what you're
Right.
a coach. If you're a coach and you're scouting a team that you're playing, that is what you're looking for.
Right. You've got to play your A+ football. And I don't think UC's done that this year. I think this would be a great game for them to do it. But here's what I do know. They got 6 guys going to the Senior Bowl. They've probably got 8 or 9 guys that are going to be drafted. And they had so many guys come back from the Peach Bowl. So I don't think they go into Dallas and they're looking at the stadium and they're just happy to be there. I think they're going in there because they have unfinished business. And again, Bryce Young, Jameson Williams is the strength of Alabama. Kobe Bryant, Sauce Gardner are the strength of this Bearcats team. I think Alec Pierce can win a battle against anyone on the outside. I think Josh Wiley and Leonard Taylor create matchup problems. Jerome Ford and Des Ridder are matchup problems. It takes UC's best, but I really can see an avenue where they can beat Alabama. You know, Auburn was a backup quarterback, and Auburn let that game slip away at the end. LSU was in it at the end. Florida played them, and I just watched UCF beat Florida in a bowl game, and UC hung 52 on UC. I mean, it's remarkable that I think there is enough there. And a lot of this is just having so much time to look into this game that you talk yourself into stuff. But I really do believe in my heart that UC can go in and win this game against Alabama.
Georgia and Michigan.
Look, I think everyone has anointed Georgia the best team of football all year, except for that SEC title game. I've seen a team that has flaws. I've seen a team offensively that isn't extremely explosive, and their defense got exposed a little bit. Michigan's a different animal because Michigan's so reliant on their running game.
Right.
I think Georgia's too good in their run defense that Michigan can't score enough. But I do think that's closer than a lot of people think. I do think Georgia comes out on top of that, though.
I would agree with both of those assessments. And I think there's an avenue Cincinnati plays for the national championship January 10th. I think it's against Georgia in a peach. People forget, Tony, and I'm sure you don't, but people forget how very close the Bearcats were to winning that Peach Bowl and how different the conversation would have been this whole season had the Bearcats come in off a undefeated season, having beaten Georgia in the Peach Bowl.
Yeah, and I just think there's so much that they learned from that. And there's so many players that said, we're coming back, that could have went to the NFL and that could have left. They came back for a reason. And look, they have they've had this target on their back all year in the American Athletic Conference. They've gotten everybody's best. They had to go on the road. And again, preseason, Indiana was a top 15 team. Notre Dame, I still conclude as one of the biggest wins of the college football season, at least one of the biggest 5 wins. And they did that by really playing 2.5 good quarters. And they ran away from Notre Dame at the end. I don't think they've played their best football yet. I think the extended time going into the bowl helps. They're 100% healthy. You don't see bowl opt-outs. This is a team that is excited and has a big opportunity. And I know just from following this team and following along with bowl practices that they have been locked in and they're ready to go.
I want to let you go pretty soon, but I have to ask you about Joe Burrow and the Bengals.
Yeah.
And I am of the belief that the way this Bengals roster has been built offensively, they are as good as the Kansas City Chiefs. And I think the Bengals believe they can be the next Kansas City Chiefs, quarterback and all.
Yeah. I watched Dan Orlovsky on Monday this week say that the Bengals have the best skill group in the AFC. And I can't go away from that. You know, I think Joe Burrow is a top 5 quarterback in the NFL right now. And I'm watching what they're doing. And there was so much conversation leading up to the draft of Team Penei Sewell, Team Jamar Chase. I was from the get-go Team Jamar Chase because this is the vision.
Yep.
You know, so many teams in the NFL. Look at Tennessee. They have the injury to Derrick Henry, and immediately they're one-dimensional and they can't beat you. How do you defend against the Cincinnati Bengals right now? Do you take Jamar Chase away? Because they still have T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, and Joe Mixon. Do you try to load the box and take away Joe Mixon? Because they have this 3-headed monster at wide receiver. Do you drop 2 safeties back and keep everything in front of you, and then Joe Mixon's going to tear you up? And oh, by the way, Tyler Boyd's 27, and the rest of the core is younger than that. They're all here until at least 2023 through that season. It's exciting. And, you know, I think they're ahead of schedule. I think they've crashed the party 1 year early, but the organization deserves a ton of credit. They've rebuilt this defense. They've done so well through the draft. They're going to have top 5 money to spend in the offseason to really secure that offensive line. But good luck trying to defend this team going forward if Joe Burrow doesn't turn the ball over.
Yep.
And they protect him when he drops back, because there's no way you can cover all the weapons.
They're going to put up points. And the question is the defense going to hold up? I mean, I think the Bengals defense has been rebuilt incredibly well. And I think their secondary is, you know, knock wood, very healthy right now. And they've actually got a secondary that can defend, I think, in a respectful manner, in a respectable, manner against the Chiefs' weapons on the outside. Look,
I worry about Travis Kelce.
Of course. And that
I worry
is
because I watched what Mark Andrews did and I watched what George Kittle did. And, you know, that's my concern with the Bengals defensively. But, you know, I think a lot can be taken in this league with losses. You know, the Bears loss where Burrow turned the ball over, the Jets loss where the defense just took the week off. I think that goes a long way, and you build and you learn, especially from a younger team, how to be an NFL successful team, right? How to win games. And I look at these last 2 weeks, they win a defensive battle against Denver, and then they win a shootout where, if you really look against Baltimore, the defense didn't play really well. Josh Johnson had a lot of success.
Third down was horrific, Tony.
Yeah. So in 2 weeks, they've won in different manners. So now they know they can win in different styles. And I know a lot of people are saying it's Kansas City and the rest. Kansas City's won 8 in a row. You got to lose sometime, you know, and this is a team and this is an offense that is playing better than they have all year in the Cincinnati Bengals. Joe Burrow has this new confidence, and I love everything about this team and where they're headed right now.
I think there's a lot of reason to feel very optimistic about both football teams in Cincinnati. That is the point of this podcast, Tony Pike, is to talk about the Bearcats and Bengals, and especially when the Bearcats are playing for a national championship. I really appreciate you joining me, Tony. Your Twitter handle, I want to make sure I get this right, TONY_PIKE15, your number at UC.
Yep. You know, I chose to go the UC number instead of the Carolina Panthers.
Yeah, I think
rightfully so.
What was Matt Moore like, Tony?
I loved Matt Moore. Matt Moore was great to me. I saw a stat earlier this morning, 24 straight losses for Notre Dame quarterbacks in the NFL.
I did not know that.
Jimmy Clausen was 4 of those. So, maybe they should have given me some more time in Carolina. But yes, Ian Book last night made it 24 straight losses for former Notre Dame quarterback starting
that
in
was,
the NFL.
by the way, Tony, that was a painful game to watch.
Brutal to watch all the way around. Makes you appreciate what we have in Cincinnati.
It
Who
really
would have thought
does.
we'd have been saying that at the start of the year?
Yeah, no. Again, that is Tony Pike. He does a tremendous job on ESPN 1530 noon to 2 daily, and he is on Cincy 360. I got that right, Tony?
Yes, sir. Yes,
All
sir.
right, and he is also co-host with Dan Horde of Bearcats Insider weekly on Bally Sports Ohio. What time are you on this week, Tony? Previewing the
6 o'clock. The show will air on Wednesday and Thursday. So a lot of good stuff leading into the bowl game, and for the Bearcats, if they win, that allows me to do another show. So it's
another
a win-win
paycheck
for both sides. It's another paycheck.
Well, the pride of Reading High School 2004. I want to thank you very much for joining me. It's been so much fun. We'll have to do this again. Okay, Tony?
Anytime. I appreciate you.
You bet. All right. He's Tony Pike. I'm Trags, Mike Petralia. Thanks for listening to the JungleRoar podcast.